The moment I pulled into my childhood home's driveway that December evening, I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. You know that feeling when you're about to walk into a situation you've been dreading for weeks, maybe even months, but you go anyway because, well, that's what family expects. My name is Grace, and at 31 years old, I thought I'd finally outgrown that anxious feeling that came with family gatherings. I was wrong. The old colonial house stood there, wrapped in twinkling Christmas lights that my father had probably spent an entire weekend putting up, cursing under his breath the whole time, while my mother directed from below. It looked like something out of a holiday movie, all warm and inviting from the outside. But I knew better. I sat in my car for a moment longer, watching my breath fog up the windshield, trying to gather the courage to walk through that front door. You see, being the youngest of 4 children in the Mitchell family wasn't exactly the blessing people assume it is. While my siblings, Rebecca, Thomas, and Jennifer, had all followed the prescribed path of marriage, kids, and suburban bliss, I had taken a different route. I'd moved to Boston after college, started my own graphic design business, traveled to places they'd only seen in magazines, and built a life that made me happy. But to them, I was still little Gracie, the baby who needed guidance, who hadn't quite figured things out yet, because I didn't have a ring on my finger or a baby on my hip. The text from my mother earlier that day had been typical. "Don't forget, dinner's at 6 sharp. Your father doesn't like to wait, and you know how the children get when they're hungry." The children. My nieces and nephews ranging from 2 to 12 years old. Don't get me wrong, I loved those kids fiercely, but somehow their existence had become another measuring stick for my supposed failures. I finally forced myself out of the car, my boots crunching on the salted walkway. The front door opened before I could even reach for the handle, and there was my mother, Patricia Mitchell, in all her holiday glory. She was wearing the same red cashmere sweater she'd worn to every Christmas dinner for the past 5 years, her hair perfectly coiffed, her smile a little too bright. "Grace, darling, you're late," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and disappointment. It's only 5:45, but in Mitchell time, if you weren't 15 minutes early, you were late. Everyone else is already here. Come in, it's freezing out there. The house was exactly as I remembered it, maybe even more so. Every surface seemed to sparkle with Christmas decorations, from the elaborate garland wrapped around the banister to the collection of nutcrackers that had taken over the mantel. The smell of roasting turkey and my mother's famous stuffing filled the air, mixing with the pine scent from the enormous tree in the living room. It should have felt like coming home, but instead, it felt like walking into a museum of what my life was supposed to be. Rebecca was the first to greet me, her 4-month-old balanced on her hip while she corralled her 2 older kids with her free hand. At 37, she'd perfected the art of looking effortlessly put together while managing chaos. Her husband, David, was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the den with the other men, watching whatever game was on. "Grace! Oh my goodness, look at you!" Rebecca's eyes did that quick scan that all my family members seemed to have perfected, checking for signs of improvement in my life. A ring, perhaps, or maybe a softer look that might indicate I was finally ready to settle down. "You look tired. Are you taking care of yourself? You know Sarah from my book club has a son about your age. He's a doctor, very successful." I forced a smile, the kind I'd been practicing in my bathroom mirror for years. "I'm fine, Becca. Just busy with work. You know how it is." Except she didn't know how it was. Rebecca had married David straight out of college and had her first baby 2 years later. She'd never had to build something from nothing, never had to prove herself in boardrooms full of men who assumed she was the assistant. Never had to come home to an empty apartment and feel perfectly content with her own company. Thomas appeared next, all 6'3" of him, looking every inch the successful lawyer he'd become. His wife, Margaret, stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her diamond ring catching the light from the chandelier. They'd been married for 8 years, had 2 kids in private school, and lived in a house that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. Not that I was counting. "Gracie!" Thomas boomed, using the nickname I'd specifically asked him not to use approximately 1,000 times. "How's the little art project going? Still playing with computers?" He said it like I was finger painting in kindergarten, not running a successful business with clients across the country. It's going well, actually, I started, ready to tell him about the major contract I'd just landed with a tech startup. But he'd already turned away, distracted by his 7-year-old tugging at his sleeve, demanding attention. That was the thing about being single and childless in my family. Your accomplishments were somehow less real, less important, because they didn't involve anyone else. Jennifer, the second oldest at 35, at least had the decency to look somewhat sympathetic when she hugged me. She'd always been the closest thing I had to an ally in the family, though even she had joined the ranks of the Married with Children Club 3 years ago. "Hey, you," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "How are you, really?" "I'm good," I said. And I meant it. Despite the anxiety of being here, despite knowing what was coming, I was good. My business was thriving, I'd just booked a trip to Portugal for the spring, and I'd been seeing someone for a few months, though I hadn't mentioned him to the family yet. Why give them ammunition when things were still so new? "Dinner's ready." My mother's voice carried from the dining room, and like trained soldiers, we all filed in that direction. That's when I saw it, the setup that would change everything. The dining room was my mother's pride and joy, with its mahogany table that could seat 12 comfortably, the china cabinet full of wedding gifts and family heirlooms, and the chandelier that had been my grandmother's. Tonight it was set to perfection with the good china, the crystal glasses, and enough silverware to confuse anyone who hadn't been drilled in proper etiquette from birth. The main table was set for the adults, with my parents at either end, my siblings and their spouses filling in the sides. It was a scene straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting, except for one glaring detail. There was no place setting for me at the main table. Instead, off to the side was the kids' table. You know the one. Every family has it. The folding table dragged up from the basement, covered with a plastic tablecloth because heaven forbid the children spill something on the good linens. Paper plates instead of china, plastic cups instead of crystal, and mismatched chairs that wobbled if you shifted wrong. That's where my place card sat, right between my 6-year-old nephew and my 4-year-old niece. I stood there, frozen, sure I was misunderstanding. Surely this was a mistake. I was 31 years old. I paid taxes. I owned my own business. I had a retirement account, for crying out loud. But there it was, my name in my mother's perfect calligraphy, sitting at the kids' table like I was still 12 years old. "Mum," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "I think there's been a mistake. My place card is at the kids' table." She was busying herself with the turkey, directing my father on how to carve it properly, as if he hadn't been doing it for 40 years. "Oh, no mistake, dear. We needed the space at the main table for the couples, and you know how the little ones love having Aunt Grace with them. You don't mind, do you? It's just for dinner." Just for dinner. The words echoed in my head as I looked around the room. Rebecca and David were settling into their seats, Thomas helping Margaret with her chair, like the gentleman he'd been raised to be. Jennifer caught my eye, and I saw a flash of something. Maybe pity, maybe understanding, but she didn't say anything. None of them did. Because I'm not. How many? Don't make. I'm just the least. He was. You know what? I said, feeling something shift inside me, like a door finally closing on a room I'd been trying to air out for years. "You're right. Mum did work hard on this dinner, and it looks beautiful. Really, it does." I looked around the room, taking in the faces of my family, some confused, some annoyed, some already dismissing this as another one of Grace's moments. "I think I'm going to go." "Go?" My mother's voice pitched higher. "What do you mean, go? We're about to eat." I was already reaching for my coat, my hands surprisingly steady. "I mean, I'm leaving. You've made it very clear where I stand in this family, literally, and I'm tired of pretending it's okay." I slipped my arms into my coat, feeling lighter with each movement. "Enjoy your dinner. I'm sure it'll be perfect without me." "It usually is." "Grace Elizabeth Mitchell." My mother's voice followed me as I walked toward the door. "You get back here this instant. You're being ridiculous. It's just a seat." I turned at the doorway, looking back at them all, my perfect family in their perfect dining room with their perfect lives. "You're right, Mum. It is just a seat, but it's also 31 years of being told I'm not enough, not married enough, not maternal enough, not settled enough. Done trying to earn a seat at your table when you've made it clear I don't deserve one. Jennifer stood up, looking conflicted. Grace, come on, just stay. We can figure this out. Can we, though? I asked her. Because I've been waiting for someone in this family to stand up for me, to say something, anything when I'm dismissed and diminished. But you all just go along with it. Every single time. That's not fair, Rebecca chimed in, juggling the baby who'd started to fuss. We love you. You know that. I know you love the idea of me, I said. The me that fits into your neat little box. The quirky aunt who's good for babysitting and buying expensive gifts because she doesn't have her own kids to spend money on. The cautionary tale you can whisper about at your book clubs. Poor Grace, still single at 31. We keep trying to set her up, but you know how picky she is. Now you're being dramatic, Thomas said, using his lawyer voice, the one designed to make the opposition feel small and irrational. It's a seating arrangement, not some grand statement about your worth as a person. Isn't it, though? I challenged. When was the last time any of you asked me about my work? Do you even know what I do? Do you know I just landed a contract that will set me up for the next 2 years? Do you know I'm happy? Really, truly happy with my life? No, because all you see is what's missing. The husband, the kids, the minivan in the suburbs. And because I don't have those things, I'm sentenced to the kids' table like I'm still waiting to grow up. If you're so happy, why are you making such a big deal about this? My father's voice cut through the room like a knife. A truly confident person wouldn't care where they sat. I laughed, surprising myself. You're right, Dad, a truly confident person wouldn't care, and that's why I'm leaving. Because I finally am confident enough to know I deserve better than this. I opened the door, the cold December air rushing in like a welcome friend. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope the dinner is everything you wanted it to be. Grace! My mother's voice cracked. If you leave now, don't expect us to just welcome you back when you've gotten over this tantrum. I paused on the threshold, looking back one more time. My mother stood there, hands on her hips, face flushed with indignation. Behind her, my family sat frozen at their perfect table, the empty kids' table standing as a monument to everything wrong with this picture. I'm not having a tantrum, Mum. I'm having a revelation, and I don't expect anything from any of you anymore. That's the point. I closed the door behind me, cutting off whatever response was coming. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline coursing through my body as I made my way to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, letting the reality of what I'd just done wash over me. My phone was already buzzing. Rebecca. I let it go to voicemail, then Thomas. Then a text from Jennifer. What the hell, Grace? Come back. We can work this out. But I was already pulling out of the driveway, my childhood home getting smaller in the rearview mirror, until it was just another house decorated for Christmas. I drove without really knowing where I was going, just needing to move, to put distance between myself and that dining room. The radio was playing Christmas songs, all joy and peace and family togetherness, and I turned it off, needing silence to sort through the storm in my head. Had I overreacted? The doubt crept in like it always did, my mother's voice echoing in my ears. Just a seat. Just being dramatic. Just making a scene, but no. I'd been adjusting myself into smaller and smaller spaces for years, accepting less because making waves was scarier than drowning quietly. I ended up at a small coffee shop downtown, one of those places that stayed open late and didn't ask questions when you ordered your third cup and looked like you'd been crying. Which I hadn't been, not yet, but I could feel it building behind my eyes. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes and a nose ring, brought me my coffee and a piece of chocolate cake I hadn't ordered. On the house, she said quietly. You look like you could use it. I almost broke down right there, this small kindness from a stranger hitting harder than my family's indifference. Thank you, I managed. Family Christmas dinner gone wrong. She nodded knowingly. The holidays, right? They make everything harder. She paused, then added, For what it's worth, anyone who made you feel like you needed to leave on Christmas probably needed to see you walk away. I sat with that thought as she moved on to other customers. My phone continued its insistent buzzing, and I finally looked at the accumulating messages. Mum. This is childish, Grace. Your father is very upset. The children keep asking where Aunt Grace went. Thomas. Seriously? You're going to ruin Christmas over a seating chart? Grow up. Rebecca. I can't believe you just left. Do you have any idea how much work Mum put into this dinner? But it was the message from Jennifer that stopped me cold. They put me at the kids' table my first year after college too. I never said anything. Maybe I should have. I stared at her text, feeling a mix of validation and sadness. So it wasn't just me. This was a pattern, a way of keeping us in our place until we earned our spot through marriage and children. Jennifer had endured it silently until she met Marcus and suddenly became worthy of adult status. How many family dinners had she sat through feeling exactly like I felt tonight? I typed back, "It shouldn't have happened to you either." Her response came quickly. "I know. I'm sorry I didn't say anything tonight. It wasn't right." At least someone understood. I put my phone face down on the table and took a sip of my coffee, letting the warmth spread through me. The cake was delicious, rich and dark, and nothing like the fruitcake my mother insisted on serving every year despite no one actually liking it. An hour passed, then 2. The messages kept coming, growing increasingly frantic, and then angry. A voicemail from my father, his voice stern and disappointed, talking about family loyalty and respect. Another from my mother, tears in her voice now, asking how I could do this to her, to the family, on Christmas of all days. But buried in amongst the guilt trips and the anger was something else. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. "Hi Grace, this is David, Rebecca's husband. I just wanted to say that took guts. For what it's worth, I've always thought the way they treat you was wrong. Rebecca won't admit it, but she knows it too. Sometimes it takes someone walking away to make people see what they've been doing. Merry Christmas." I read it 3 times, this unexpected ally emerging from the shadows. David, who I'd written off as just another addition to the Mitchell family machine, had been watching, noticing, disagreeing. How many other silent observations had been made over the years? How many people had seen what was happening but stayed quiet to keep the peace? My phone rang. Jennifer. This time I answered. "Hey," I said. "Hey yourself." She sounded tired. "Mum's having a meltdown. She's alternating between crying and raging about how you've ruined Christmas. Dad's shut himself in his study. Thomas is ranting about respect and family values. It's a mess." "And Rebecca?" "Trying to keep everyone calm while managing the kids. You know how she is. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here." Jennifer sighed. "Grace, I need to tell you something. Remember when I was 25 and Mum tried to set me up with that accountant from her church? The one who collected stamps and lived with his mother?" "Gerald," I said, remembering, "with the comb-over and the sweaty palms." "That's the one. Well, what I never told you was that I was already seeing Marcus. We'd been together for 3 months, but I was so scared of disappointing Mum, of not doing things the right way that I actually went on 3 dates with Gerald before I finally told them about Marcus." "Jenny, why didn't you ever tell me this?" "Because I was embarrassed. Because I thought if I just played along, followed the rules, everything would work out. And it did, I guess. I got married, had kids, earned my seat at the adult table. But you know what? I'm 35 years old, and I still feel like I'm performing for them. Like I'm one mistake away from being demoted back to the kids' table. Not literally, but you know what I mean." I did know. The constant performance, the endless audition for their approval. "It's exhausting," and I said, "It is, and maybe you did the right thing tonight. Maybe someone needed to finally say enough." She paused. "They're all going to want you to apologize, you know, to come back and make nice and pretend this never happened." "I know. What are you going to do?" I looked around the coffee shop at the strangers going about their lives, at the barista who'd shown me more kindness in 5 minutes than my family had in years. "I don't know. but I'm not apologizing for wanting to be treated like an adult in my own family. Good, Jennifer said firmly. Don't. Let them sit with this. Let them figure out why their 31-year-old daughter felt so unseen and unvalued that she left Christmas dinner. We talked for a few more minutes before she had to go. The kids were getting restless, and she could hear my mother calling for her. I'll call you tomorrow, she promised. And Grace, I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I sat there for a while longer, processing everything. The coffee shop was starting to fill up with other Christmas refugees, people who, for whatever reason, weren't where they were supposed to be tonight. There was a strange comfort in that, in knowing I wasn't the only one whose family reality didn't match the Hallmark movie ideal. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from my nephew, Oliver, Thomas's oldest. He'd somehow gotten hold of his dad's phone and sent a picture of the kids' table, my empty seat glaringly obvious with the caption, "Where are you, Aunt Grace? This table is boring without you." I smiled despite everything. 7 years old, and he already had more emotional intelligence than most of the adults in that house. I texted back, "Had to go on an adventure, save me some dessert?" His response was immediate. "Mom says you're in trouble, but I think you're brave." Out of the mouths of babes. It was getting late, and the coffee shop would be closing soon. I needed to figure out where to go, what to do next. Going home to my apartment seemed both appealing and depressing. I'd be alone on Christmas, but then again, hadn't I been alone at that table too? As I gathered my things, my phone rang one more time. Mum. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe to accept. "Grace," she said, and I could hear she'd been crying. "Why are you doing this to us?" "I'm not doing anything to you, Mum. I'm doing something for me." By ruining Christmas? By embarrassing us in front of everyone? In front of everyone? Mum, it was just family there. Unless you mean I embarrassed you in front of yourselves, made you actually look at how you treat me. She was quiet for a moment, then, "You've always been so sensitive, taking everything personally. We love you, Grace. Isn't that enough?" Love isn't supposed to come with terms and conditions, Mum. It's not supposed to make you feel small. I don't understand what you want from us. "I want you to see me," I said, surprised by the tears that were suddenly falling. "Not the me you wish I was or the me you're waiting for me to become. Just me, as I am, and apparently that's too much to ask." "You're being unfair. We've always supported you, Dom." "No, Mum, you've tolerated me. You've waited for me to figure things out and join the club. And when I didn't follow the script, you literally relegated me to the children's section. Do you have any idea what that feels like? It was just practical. It was symbolic, and you know it. Deep down, you know it." More silence. I could hear the sounds of Christmas dinner in the background, muted conversations, the clink of silverware. Life going on without me. "What do you want me to say, Grace?" "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to think. Really think about why your 31-year-old daughter would rather spend Christmas alone than at a kid's table in her childhood home. If you're trying to punish us, I'm not trying to do anything except respect myself, something you all seem to have a problem with." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "That's not true. We respect you. We just worry about you, all alone, no family of your own." "I have a family," I interrupted. You're supposed to be my family. But somewhere along the way you decided I didn't qualify for full membership and I'm done auditioning for a role I'll never get. So what? You're just going to cut us out of your life? Over a seating arrangement? I'm going to take some time to figure out what kind of relationship I want with people who see me as less than. And Mum? It was never about the seating arrangement. It was about what it represented. The fact that you still can't see that tells me everything I need to know. I hung up before she could respond. It wasn't satisfying exactly, but it was necessary. I'd said what I needed to say, even if she wasn't ready to hear it. The barista was starting to clean up, and I took that as my cue to leave. As I walked to my car, I realized I'd been parked there for 3 hours. The parking meter had long since expired, but there was no ticket. A small Christmas miracle. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to decide where to go. Home seemed like giving up, but what else was there? Then I remembered something. My friend Lisa had mentioned she was doing an orphan Christmas for people who didn't have family plans or didn't want to deal with their families. She'd texted me about it weeks ago and I'd politely declined, sure that I needed to be with my family. But maybe what I needed was to be with people who chose to include me. I scrolled through my messages until I found her invitation. If you change your mind, we'll be at my place all day. Judgment, no questions, just food and friends. It was late, probably too late to show up at someone's gathering, but I texted anyway. Is the offer still open? Her response was immediate. Yes, get over here. We just broke out the good wine, and Marcus is about to lose spectacularly at charades. I put the address in my GPS and started driving, feeling something lift in my chest. Maybe this wasn't the Christmas I'd planned, but maybe that was okay. Maybe it was better. As I drove through the quiet streets, I thought about my family, probably finishing dinner by now. Were they talking about me? Were they angry? Sad? Or had they already moved on? Glad that the difficult one had removed herself from the equation. My phone, which I'd thrown in my bag, buzzed intermittently. More messages, more voicemails. I'd deal with them tomorrow, or next week, or never. Right now, I just needed to be somewhere where my worth wasn't measured by my relationship status or reproductive choices. Lisa's apartment was in a converted brownstone, and I could see the warm light spilling from the windows, hear the laughter from the street. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. It was one thing to leave a toxic situation. It was another to walk into a new one, vulnerable and raw from the evening's events. But then the door opened, and Lisa was there, having spotted me from the window. She was wearing a ridiculous Christmas sweater with a cat shooting lasers from its eyes, and her smile was so genuine, so welcoming, that I felt the tears threaten again. "Grace," she called out, "get in here! It's freezing." I grabbed the bottle of wine I always kept in my car for emergencies, this definitely qualified, and made my way up the steps. Lisa pulled me into a hug that felt nothing like my mother's earlier embrace. This was warm and real, and without agenda. "I'm so glad you came," she said, and I believed her. "Come on, everyone's dying to meet you. I talk about you all the time." The apartment was crowded with people I didn't know, but the atmosphere was so different from my family's dining room. There was laughter that didn't feel forced, conversations that seemed genuinely interested, and a complete lack of judgment about anyone's life choices. Lisa introduced me around, and I found myself in conversations about everything from travel to books to the best place to get Thai food at 2 a.m. No one asked why I wasn't with my family. No one questioned my relationship status. No one made me feel like I was lacking anything. At some point, I found myself in the kitchen with Lisa, helping her refill snack bowls. "Thank you for this," I said. "For letting me crash your party." "Are you kidding? I'm honored you chose to spend Christmas with us." She paused, studying me. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Maybe later," I said. "Right now, I just want to be here." "Then be here," she said simply. "That's all any of us are doing." The evening flew by in a blur of laughter and conversation. I played charades badly, participated in a heated debate about the best Christmas movie, Die Hard counts, I Will Die on That Hill, and ate more cheese than any one person should consume in a single sitting. But more than that, I felt seen, not as someone's daughter or sister or aunt, but as Grace. Just Grace. And apparently that was enough. It was near midnight when my phone rang again. "Jennifer." I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "They're all gone," she said without preamble. "The dinner ended early. Everyone was uncomfortable. Mum cried through dessert. Dad barely spoke. It was awful." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. I hadn't wanted to ruin anything. I just wanted to be included. "I didn't mean for—" "No," Jennifer cut me off. "I'm not calling to make you feel guilty. I'm calling to tell you that after everyone left, Marcus and I had a long talk about family and expectations and the way things have always been. And Grace, we're proud of you. What you did tonight took courage I wish I'd had." I stepped out onto Lisa's small balcony, needing the cold air to process this. "Jenny, Marcus wants to invite you to our place for New Year's. Just us and the kids. No parents, no Thomas and Rebecca. Just us. Would you come?" "Are you sure? Won't Mum— Will you come inside?" "Hi, Grace, you don't know me, but I'm Emma, David's sister. He told me what happened tonight. I just wanted to say that I've been watching your design work online for months. Sorry if that's creepy. And you're incredibly talented. If you ever want to grab coffee and talk shop, I'd love to pick your brain about freelancing. Also, good for you for standing up for yourself. Family's hard. Emma. I stared at the message, this unexpected connection coming from the ruins of the evening. Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe things did have to break before they could be rebuilt. I went back inside where Lisa immediately handed me a fresh glass of wine and pulled me into a conversation about travel horror stories. As I laughed at someone's tale of getting lost in Bangkok, I felt my phone buzz again in my pocket. This time I didn't check it. Whatever it was could wait. Right now, I was exactly where I needed to be. The party wound down around 2 a.m., with people exchanging numbers and making plans for New Year's Eve. Lisa insisted I take home enough leftovers to feed a small army, and I didn't protest. As I drove home through the empty streets, I felt different. Lighter, somehow, despite the heaviness of what had happened. My apartment was quiet and dark, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt like mine. I put the leftovers in the fridge, changed into my favourite pyjamas, and finally looked at my phone. 37 messages, 12 voicemails. I scrolled through them, not reading, just observing the progression from anger to panic to confusion. The last text was from my mother, sent just minutes ago. I don't understand what happened tonight, but I love you. We need to talk, please. I stared at those words. I don't understand. That was the problem, wasn't it? She didn't understand because she'd never had to. She'd followed the prescribed path, done everything right, earned her place without question. The idea that someone might want something different, might be happy with something different, was incomprehensible to her. But that wasn't my problem to solve. I plugged my phone into charge and left it on the kitchen counter. Tomorrow I'd figure out how to respond, how to navigate this new reality I'd created. Tomorrow I'd decide which bridges to rebuild and which to let burn. But tonight, I'd stood up for myself in a way I never had before. And that was enough. As I climbed into bed, I thought about next Christmas. Would I be welcome at my parents' table? Would there be a place for me that didn't require shrinking myself to fit? I didn't know. But I did know that I'd never sit at that kid's table again. Not literally, not metaphorically. Some lines once crossed can't be uncrossed. Some words once spoken can't be taken back. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen for things to change. I fell asleep thinking about Lisa's party, about chosen family and unexpected allies, about Emma's message and Jennifer's invitation. Maybe losing my place at one table meant I'd find my seat at others. Maybe walking away from what I'd always known would lead me to what I actually needed. Or maybe I'd just traded one complicated situation for another. But at least this one was mine to navigate on my own terms. No kids' table required. The text conversation that changed everything came 3 days later. I'd been fielding messages from various family members with polite but firm responses. I need some time. Let's talk after the holidays. I'm okay, just processing. But when my mother texted asking if I'd come to a family meeting to resolve this misunderstanding, I knew I had to be clearer. There's no misunderstanding, Mom. You assigned your adult daughter to the children's table. The message was received loud and clear. Her response was quick. It wasn't meant as an insult. We just thought you'd enjoy being with the kids since you don't have your own yet. There it was. Yet. Like my childlessness was a temporary condition I was working to cure. That's exactly the problem, I typed. You see my life as incomplete, as a waiting room for the real thing. I'm not waiting for anything. This is my life and I'm living it. But don't you want a family? I have a family. You're my family. You've made it clear I don't count unless I come with a spouse and children attached. The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared several times before her next message came through. That's not true. We've always supported your career. Name one specific thing about my work. One client, one project, anything. Silence. Exactly, I continued. You tolerate my career as something I do while waiting for my real life to start, but this is my real life, Mum. And I'm tired of apologizing for it. More silence. Then, I need to think about all this. You do that, I replied. And while you're thinking, consider why you believe a 31-year-old successful business owner belongs at a children's table. Because until you can answer that honestly, we don't have much to talk about. I turned off my phone after that, needing space from the constant emotional tug-of-war. Instead, I threw myself into work, finishing projects and starting new ones. I met Emma for coffee, and we talked for 3 hours about design and freelancing. And the challenge of building something from nothing. She became a regular coffee date, and eventually, a friend. New Year's Eve at Jennifer's house was everything Christmas dinner hadn't been. Small, intimate, and genuine. The kids stayed up past their bedtime, hyped up on sparkling cider and cookies. Marcus and I had a long conversation about his own struggles with family expectations, being the son of immigrants who didn't understand why he'd chosen teaching over medicine. Jennifer and I stayed up until 3 a.m., talking in a way we hadn't since we were teenagers. I owe you an apology, she said as we sat on her couch, the kids finally asleep, Marcus having gone to bed an hour earlier. For every time I saw what was happening and said nothing, for getting married and forgetting what it felt like to be on the outside. You don't owe me anything, I said, but she shook her head. I do. We all do. The way they've treated you. The way we've all just accepted it. It's not okay. And I'm sorry it took you walking out for me to see that. We hugged, and I felt something heal between us. Not everything, but a start. January passed in a blur of work and newfound friendships. Lisa's group had adopted me, and I found myself with more social plans than I'd had in years. I joined a hiking group, started taking pottery classes, said yes to things I'd previously been too anxious to try. Without the constant weight of my family's disapproval, I felt free to actually live. Then, in early February, my father called. Not a text or an email, but an actual phone call. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Grace, he said, his voice formal, I'd like to have lunch, just the 2 of us. This was unexpected. My father and I had never done anything just the 2 of us. Our relationship had always been mediated through my mother, filtered through family gatherings. Okay, I said cautiously. When and where? We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, the kind of place where business deals were made over overpriced steaks. He was already there when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. Had he always had those lines around his eyes, that slight stoop to his shoulders? Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. We ordered, him his usual steak, me a salad I probably wouldn't finish, and then sat in awkward silence until the drinks arrived. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he said finally. She'd probably be upset if she did, but I needed to talk to you without the noise. I waited, sipping my water. I've been thinking about Christmas dinner, he continued, about what you said, and I realized something. Do you remember when you were 8 and you won that art contest at school? The memory surfaced slowly. I'd drawn a picture of our family, spending hours getting every detail right. I'd been so proud when they announced my name over the intercom. I remember, I said. You came home so excited, waving that certificate around. And do you remember what I said? I did, though I'd buried it deep. You asked if I'd finished my math homework. He winced. I've been thinking about that. About all the times you came to us with your accomplishments and we redirected you to what we thought was important. I think we broke something in you, Grace, and I'm sorry. I felt tears prick my eyes. My father didn't apologize. Richard Mitchell was always right, always in control. This vulnerability was new and unsettling. I don't know how to fix this, he continued. Your mother and I, we followed a script. College, marriage, children, success. Worked for us. When you started going off script, we didn't know what to do, so we kept trying to push you back onto the path we understood. The kids' table, that was wrong. I see that now. You're not a child, you haven't been for a long time. We just didn't know how to see you as an adult when your life looked so different from what we expected. Dad, I started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. I looked up your company. I spent hours going through your portfolio, reading testimonials from your clients. Grace, you're brilliant. The work you do, the business you've built, I had no idea. I'm ashamed to admit that, but I didn't. We were so focused on what you weren't doing that we missed what you were. The tears were falling now, and I didn't bother to wipe them away. Why didn't you ever ask? Because I'm a foolish, stubborn man who thought he knew better. Your mother and we thought we were protecting you, guiding you toward happiness. We didn't realize we were pushing you away. Is this Mum's apology too, delivered by proxy? He shook his head. No, your mother. She's struggling with all this. She feels betrayed, like you rejected everything she stands for. I'm here for me. To say what I should have said years ago. I'm proud of you, Grace. Not proud of who you might become or what you might achieve, but proud of who you are right now, today. You are. I couldn't speak. These were words I'd waited my whole life to hear, and now that they were here, I didn't know what to do with them. I can't promise your mother will come around, he continued. She's stubborn. You get that from her, by the way. But I want you to know that you have a place at our table, the adult table. Always. And if that's not enough, if we've hurt you too badly, I understand, but I had to try. We sat in silence as the food arrived, then carefully, like navigating a minefield, we began to talk. Really talk. About my business, about his retirement plans, about the gap between generations and expectations. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward pauses and careful word choices, but it was real. As we parted in the parking lot, he hugged me. Not the perfunctory embrace of family gatherings, but a real hug. I love you, Grace. I'm sorry it took me so long to show it properly. I love you too, Dad. Would you consider coming to dinner next Sunday? Just family dinner, nothing fancy. Mother will be there, but I'll talk to her, make sure she understands. I thought about it. The hurt was still there, might always be there. But so was he trying to bridge a gap he'd helped create. I'll think about it, he nodded. That's all I can ask. I did go to that Sunday dinner. It was awkward and tense. My mother stiff and formal, trying to pretend everything was normal while clearly wanting to address the elephant in the room. But my father kept his word. I sat at the adult table, between him and Jennifer. Small talk was painful, deeper conversation impossible, but it was a start. Thomas remained cold, making pointed comments about family loyalty and respect for tradition. Rebecca tried to play peacekeeper, which mostly meant pretending nothing had happened. But Jennifer and her husband were warm, and my father made genuine efforts to ask about my work, my life, my plans. It wasn't perfect. It might never be perfect, but it was better than the silence, better than the exile I'd imposed on myself. Over the following months, we found a new rhythm, not the old patterns of obligation and disappointment, but something more honest. My mother and I had several difficult conversations, some ending in tears, others in anger, but gradually working toward understanding. She might never fully grasp my choices, but she was trying to accept them. The real test came at Easter dinner. I arrived to find the dining room set as usual, one long table, everyone together. My place card, yes, she still used place cards, was between Jennifer and David, the adult table, where I belonged. No kids' table this year? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. My mother paused in her fussing. I thought we'd try something different. One table. All of us together. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. We ate together, all of us, the children squirming in their seats, but included in the conversation. It was chaotic and messy and imperfect, but it was family. Real family. Not the performance we'd all been doing for years, but something more authentic. After dinner, as I helped clear the table, my mother touched my arm. Grace, I need to say something. I tensed, waiting for the criticism, the judgment, the subtle dig that would undo all our progress. I'm sorry, she said simply, for Christmas, for all of it. I thought I was helping, guiding you toward happiness. I didn't realize I was pushing you away from it. Mum? No, let me finish. I look at your life now. How confident you are, how successful, how happy. And I realize that maybe I've been wrong. Maybe there's more than one way to build a good life. I hugged her then, feeling the rigidness in her body slowly relax. Thank you, I whispered. That means everything. I still worry about you, she admitted, pulling back. Being alone? I'm not alone, I interrupted gently. I have friends. I have work I love. I have all of you. And Mum? I've been seeing someone. His name is James. It's still new, but it's good. I didn't tell you before because I needed to be sure it was about him and me, not about proving something to anyone else. She blinked, processing this. Will we meet him? When we're both ready, but Mom, you need to understand. My worth doesn't change based on whether I'm with someone or not. I need you to see that. She nodded slowly. I'm trying, Grace. I'm really trying. And that was enough. Not perfect, but enough. The following Christmas, I helped set the table. One long table, all of us together. No divisions, no hierarchies, just family. Imperfect, complicated, sometimes infuriating family, but family nonetheless. James was there, having survived the pre-holiday interrogation with grace and humour. He fit in well, laughing at my father's terrible jokes and helping my mother in the kitchen without being asked. But more importantly, I was there as myself, not performing, not shrinking, not apologising, just being. As we sat down to dinner, I caught Jennifer's eye. She smiled, raising her glass slightly in a silent toast, to standing up, to speaking out, to finding your place not at someone else's table, but in your own life. Oliver, now 8, piped up from his seat at the same table as everyone else. Remember last year when Aunt Grace left? That was crazy. The table went silent for a moment, everyone remembering that disastrous dinner. Then Thomas, of all people, laughed. Yeah, it was. But you know what? Maybe crazy was what we needed. To family, my father said, raising his glass. In all its forms. To family, we echoed. And for the first time in my life, I truly meant it. Later, as I helped with dishes, my mother said quietly, You were right to leave that night. I didn't see it then, but you were right. I wasn't trying to be right, I said. I was just trying to be seen. I see you now, she said, and in her eyes I could tell she meant it, and that made all the difference. As I drove home that night, James beside me, I thought about the journey from last Christmas to this one. The pain of walking away, the fear of standing alone, the slow work of rebuilding. It hadn't been easy. There were still moments of friction, old patterns that tried to reassert themselves, but we were trying, all of us, to build something better. Your family's pretty intense, James said, but he was smiling. But they love you. It's obvious. Yeah, I agreed. They do. It just took us a while to figure out how to show it properly. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Thank you for being brave enough to change things. Love you. I smiled, tucking the phone away. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight meant walking away first, even when it meant risking everything for the chance at something real. The kids' table was gone, but more than that, the invisible barriers that had kept me feeling small and unseen had finally fallen. I'd found my place, not just at their table, but in my own life. And that was the greatest gift of all. But let me tell you more about what happened in those months between walking out and finding my way back, because that's where the real story lies. That's where I discovered who I was when I wasn't trying to be who they wanted me to be. The morning after that first Christmas dinner disaster, I woke up in my apartment feeling like I'd run a marathon. Every muscle ached with the tension I'd been carrying, and my eyes were swollen from tears I didn't remember crying. But there was something else too, a lightness I hadn't felt in years. It was as if I'd been wearing a coat that was 3 sizes too small and had finally taken it off. I made myself coffee and sat at my kitchen table looking at my phone. 43 messages, 27 missed calls. The numbers seemed surreal. Had my absence really caused such a stir? Part of me wanted to dive in to read every message and analyse every word. But a stronger part, a part I was just getting to know, said no, not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something I'd been putting off for months. I updated my website. Not just a quick refresh, but a complete overhaul. I added all the projects I'd been too modest to showcase, wrote about my design philosophy without downplaying my expertise, and included a photo of myself that actually looked like me. Not the stiff, trying to please everyone version, but the real me. It took all day. By the time I finished, the sun was setting, painting my apartment in shades of golden rose. I published the updates and felt a surge of pride. This was who I was. This was what I'd built. No apologies, no qualifications, no just a little business dismissals. That evening, Lisa called. "Hey, superstar, how are you holding up?" I'm actually okay, I said, surprised to realize it was true. Better than okay. Good, because I have a proposition for you. My friend runs a co-working space downtown, and they're looking for someone to redesign their brand. I may have mentioned your name and shown them your work. They want to meet you next week. Lisa, no arguments. This is what friends do. We lift each other up. Besides, your work speaks for itself. I just made the introduction. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, thinking about connections. My family connections had always felt like obligations, weights to be carried. But these new connections, the ones I was choosing, they felt like wings. The meeting with the co-working space went better than I could have imagined. Not only did they hire me for the rebrand, but they offered me a discounted membership. Suddenly, I had an office outside my apartment, a place to work among other entrepreneurs and freelancers. It was there that I met Sarah. Sarah was a photographer who'd left a corporate job to pursue her passion. We bonded over coffee and shared war stories about family expectations. Her parents were first-generation immigrants who couldn't understand why she'd give up a steady paycheck for the uncertainty of art. "They love me," she said one afternoon as we took a break on the rooftop terrace. "But they love their idea of me more. Does that make sense?" "More than you know," I replied. We became accountability partners, pushing each other to reach for bigger clients, better projects. She introduced me to her network, and I introduced her to mine. Our businesses grew alongside our friendship. Meanwhile, the family situation remained complicated. Jennifer stayed in regular contact. Our relationship deeper now than it had ever been. She told me things she'd never shared before. About her own struggles with perfectionism, about the pressure she felt to maintain the image of the ideal mother and wife. "Sometimes I look at my life and wonder whose it is," she confided one evening over wine. "Like I'm playing a role in someone else's story." "So write your own," I said. "It's never too late." She laughed, but I could see her thinking about it. A month later, she enrolled in an online course to finish her master's degree, something she'd abandoned when she got pregnant with her first child. "You inspired me," she said. "Seeing you stand up for yourself, build your life on your terms, made me realize I'd stopped growing." Thomas was slower to come around. His wife, Margaret, surprisingly, was the one who built the bridge. She called me one day out of the blue. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble, "for sitting there silently while they put you at the kids' table, for all the times I've watched them dismiss you and said nothing. You don't owe me, E." "Anything," I said, but she interrupted. "I do, because I see my daughter in you. She's only 5, but she's already so strong-willed, so determined to do things her way. And I'm terrified that one day someone will try to make her feel small for not fitting into their box. I don't want to be part of a family that does that." Margaret became an unexpected ally, calling out microaggressions at family gatherings, redirecting conversations when they veered into judgment territory. Thomas noticed, of course, and it led to some tense moments, but it also led to conversations between them, and eventually between Thomas and me. "I don't get it," he said one day when we met for lunch at his request. "Your business, your lifestyle, any of it. But Margaret's right. I don't have to get it. I just have to respect it. And I haven't been doing that." It wasn't a heartfelt apology, but it was honest. Thomas had always valued honesty, even when it wasn't comfortable. We found a new equilibrium, not close, but cordial. He started referring clients to me, high-powered lawyers who needed branding work. It was his way of saying he took my work seriously, even if he couldn't say the words. Rebecca was the holdout. She remained distant, polite, but cool. Until one day, almost 6 months after Christmas, when she called me crying. "Can you come over?" she asked. I need I need to talk to someone, and I think you're the only one who might understand. I found her in her perfect kitchen in her perfect house, looking decidedly imperfect. Her usually immaculate hair was in a messy bun, her eyes red and puffy. The kids were at school, David at work. It was just us. I'm drowning, she said simply. I have everything I'm supposed to want, and I'm drowning. We talked for hours about the pressure to be perfect, about losing herself in the roles of wife and mother, about feeling like a failure for not being grateful enough for her blessed life. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. I was so angry at you for leaving that dinner, she admitted, because you did what I wanted to do. You just walked away and I couldn't. I can't. You can do whatever you need to do, I said. But walking away isn't the only option. Sometimes staying and changing things from within is braver. She started therapy the next week, started saying no to commitments that drained her, started asking David to actually partner in parenting instead of just helping out. Our relationship shifted from obligatory to genuine. She even hired me to design branding for a non-profit she was launching, focused on maternal mental health. The non-profit work led to more non-profit clients, which led to speaking engagements about design for social impact. My business evolved in directions I'd never imagined, each opportunity building on the last. I hired my first employee, then my second. The girl who'd been relegated to the kids' table was now running a company. James came into my life through one of those speaking engagements. He was in the audience, asked thoughtful questions during the Q&A, and approached me afterward to continue the conversation. He was a journalist, covering innovation and entrepreneurship. Our professional discussion turned into coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into something more. What I loved about James was that he met me where I was. He didn't see my single status as something to be fixed or my independence as intimidating. He had his own full life, his own passions and pursuits. We complemented each other without completing each other, if that makes sense. When I finally told my family about him, their reactions were telling. My mother immediately wanted to know when they'd meet him, already planning dinner parties in her head. My father asked about his career prospects. Rebecca wanted to see pictures, but Jennifer asked the right question. Are you happy? Yes, I said. I'm happy. The lead up to the next Christmas was fraught with tension. Family group texts danced around the elephant in the room. Would I come? Would there be a kids' table? How would we navigate this new dynamic? I decided to be proactive. In November, I sent an email to my parents, professional, clear, and loving. I expressed my desire to spend Christmas with the family but outlined my boundaries. I would attend as an adult family member, seated accordingly. If that couldn't be accommodated, I would make other plans. No drama, no ultimatums, just clarity. Mother called immediately. Of course you'll sit with the adults, she said, as if it had never been in question. I've already planned the seating chart. You're next to Jennifer. And that's how I found myself back at that table 1 year later. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still comments that stung. But there was also growth, understanding, and a recognition that family could evolve. James handled the interrogation with grace, deflecting my mother's more invasive questions with humour and redirecting to safer topics. He complimented her cooking genuinely, engaged my father in discussion about current events, and even won over Thomas by being knowledgeable about a recent Supreme Court case. But the moment that stood out most was a quiet one. After dinner, as everyone was scattered between the living room and kitchen, I found myself alone with my mother in the dining room. She was looking at the table lost in thought. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Not just for last year, but for all the years before. For making you feel like you weren't enough. Mum, no, let me say this. I see you now, Grace. Your success, your happiness, your strength. And I realize that happened not because of my pushing, but in spite of it. You became who you are by refusing to be who I thought you should be. And that person is pretty amazing. We hugged, really hugged, for the first time in years. Not the perfunctory embraces of greeting and goodbye, but a real connection between two women who were finally seeing each other clearly. The evening ended without drama, without exits, without tears. It ended with pie and coffee and plans for New Year's Eve. It ended with Oliver showing me his new video game and my father asking detailed questions about my latest project. It ended with normal, beautiful, imperfect family life. As James and I left, my mother handed me a wrapped gift. "Open it later," she said. In the car, I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. It was from my college graduation, just me and my parents. But what struck me was the sticky note attached to the frame. In my mother's handwriting, "Our daughter, the entrepreneur. We're so proud." "That's beautiful," James said, glancing over. "Yeah," I agreed, tears blurring my vision. "It really is." The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the evening. It had been good, even enjoyable at times. But more than that, it had been authentic. Weren't all pretending anymore. We were just being ourselves, fumbling toward connection. "Your family's growing," James observed, "not in numbers but in understanding." He was right. The family I'd walked away from a year ago wasn't the same family I'd returned to. We'd all changed, all grown. The kids' table might be gone, but what had replaced it was so much better. A table where everyone had a place, not based on their relationship status or reproductive choices, but simply because they belonged. Over the following weeks, I reflected on the journey, from that horrible Christmas dinner to this fragile but real peace. It hadn't been easy. There had been months of silence, tears of frustration, moments when I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But standing up for myself had started a domino effect of change that went far beyond seating arrangements. Jennifer was thriving in her master's program. Rebecca's nonprofit was gaining momentum. My parents were learning to see their children as individuals rather than extensions of themselves. Thomas was still Thomas, but even he was softening around the edges, especially as Margaret continued to challenge his assumptions. And me? I was building a life that felt authentic and full. My business was expanding, my relationship with James was deepening, and my friendships were sources of joy rather than obligation. I'd learned that family could be both the people you're born to and the people you choose, and that there was room in life for both. The kids' table, I realized, had never really been about where I sat. It had been about being seen as less than, as incomplete as still waiting to become. By refusing that seat, I'd claimed something much more important than a place at the adult table. I'd claimed my right to be considered whole just as I was. That's the thing about standing up for yourself. It's not just about that one moment of courage. It's about all the moments that follow the slow work of building something new from the rubble of what was. It's about having the patience to let people surprise you and the wisdom to know when they won't. It's about forgiveness, but only after acknowledgement. It's about love, but only with respect. As I write this now, another year has passed. Another Christmas is approaching. The group texts have started again, but this time they're different. This time I'm included in the planning, my opinions sought and valued. This time, when my mother asks what I can bring, she doesn't automatically assign me the rolls or the salad, the single person's dishes. She asks what I'd like to make. I think I'll make my grandmother's apple pie. The one she taught me when I was 12, just the two of us in her kitchen, her hands guiding mine as we rolled out the dough. She died before she could see what I became, but I think she would have understood. She was a woman ahead of her time, running her own seamstress business when women didn't do such things. She would have got it. James will be there again this year, but so will Sarah and a few other friends who don't have family nearby. Mother initially balked at the idea of non-family at Christmas dinner, but I held firm. Family is about more than blood. It's about the people who see you, support you, and celebrate you. And this year, our table will be full of that kind of family. The kids' table. It's been retired permanently. We still have children at our gatherings, of course. Oliver and his siblings, Rebecca's trio, various cousins. But they sit with us now, part of the conversation, part of the whole. We've learned that making everyone feel included doesn't diminish anyone else's place. If anything, it makes the table richer. Sometimes I think about that girl who sat in her car in her parents' driveway 2 years ago, gathering courage to walk into a dinner she was dreading. I want to tell her it's going to be okay, that the pain she's about to experience is the kind that leads to growth. That walking away from that table will lead her to so many better ones, that finding her voice will cost her some relationships, but deepen others. That being seen as difficult is sometimes the price of being seen at all. But she wouldn't have believed me. She needed to live it, to walk through that fire herself. We all do. That's how we learn what we're made of. That's how we discover that we're already enough, already whole, already worthy of a seat at any table we choose to join. And that, dear friends, is the real gift. Not the perfect family, or the flawless holiday, or the seat at the grown-up table. The gift is knowing your own worth and refusing to settle for less than respect. The gift is learning that love without respect is just control in a prettier package. The gift is discovering that you can love people and still require them to treat you well. The gift is finding out that when you stop making yourself small, you create space for others to grow too. So here's to all of us who've ever been relegated to the kids' table, literally or figuratively. Here's to the ones who've been told they're too much or not enough. Here's to the brave souls who've walked away from tables where they weren't valued, and to the patient ones who've worked to transform the tables they stayed at. So, here's to chosen family and blood family and the beautiful mess of learning to love each other better. Most of all, here's to knowing that you always, always deserve a seat at the table. The adult table. The main table. The table where decisions are made and voices are heard and people are seen in their full, complicated, beautiful humanity. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if they try, well, you know what to do. Walk away. Build your own table. Make it big enough for everyone who sees you for who you really are. Trust me, it's worth it. Every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt, every bridge you have to build or burn, it's all worth it to finally, fully be yourself. That's my story. It's messy and imperfect and still being written. But it's mine. And for the first time in my life, I wouldn't change a single chapter. The kids' table is gone. Long may it stay that way.